Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you guys to the fourth episode of the Red Star Podcast. Today we have a very special guest that's coming in to tell her story about addiction and recovery. Her name is Jody Marshall Wright, and she's got a very informative and deep story that's filled with a lot of trauma and ending with a lot of joy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So let's start with how did you begin to get yourself hooked on drugs? Like how did that come to be for you?
Oh goodness, it was a party. I started off, basically in high school. It was like let's go to a weekend party at a friend's house, and it started with like, we were drinking, popping acid, taking shrooms,
Right,
doing
right,
coke. It was just a teenagers having fun kind of thing,
right.
and so then it just kind of graduated to, now I need to do coke all the time. Now I, you know, get 8 balls or quarters, and just start, you know, getting high. Um, then it became, let's start doing opiates, Percocets. Let's start taking Percocets. Let's now start doing heroin, So, gosh, it's a, pretty sick addiction to have because you don't even realize, that you
Yeah, and
have become an addict. I remember after being with my ex-husband for maybe a year, one day waking up feeling sick, like, like, damn, what's wrong with me? And somebody's like, you're dope sick. And I'm like, dope? Like, what's that? What's dope sick?
right.
But I had been doing it for so
You had
long.
and you had it every day, so you never had the
I had it
symptoms.
every day, and it was like, it was so crazy because it's like we went to the city, we got some dope, and it was like, boom, we were better. Like, no more feeling sweaty, no more feeling sick. And it's like, wow, like something so simple fixed.
Now okay. So as far like dive more into being dope sick. That moment, like, what does it feel like? What does it? Is there a smell in the air? Does it taste like it? Like, is it like?
I mean, it's death. I mean, it really, literally, you can't sleep, you can't eat, you're sweating, um, you can't function. I mean, I can vividly remember with my kids, trying to get out of bed being dope sick, and it's like,
It's just impossible. Just
yeah,
an impossible
like
task.
mommy can't fool with you right now, kind of thing, because I was so ill. I mean, I would like to say some compare it to flu-like symptoms, but to me, it was a little bit more than a flu. It just,
Right.
you just can't get out of bed. You can't do anything until you have that
So
drug.
now that we've moved past the part of what it feels like to be dope sick, um, and you brought up your kids and how it affected your relationship with and your ability with your kids. Like in that moment, though, like because I know you recognize that you're not able to do anything for your kids in that
Absolutely.
moment, but did you genuinely even care, or was the addiction that strong
Right.
to where it was like, I have to do this first, regardless of anything?
Well, I think I
If you understand the
genuinely,
question.
no, no, no. Like looking back, I think I genuinely cared, but that drug was so strong that it's like, okay, mommy's gonna play with you, but I got to get well first.
Right.
So it was like, it was a care there, and it was that love for my kids, but that drug just like, you got to have it. It's
Right.
telling you like you need to go get me, you need to get well, and then do with your
And then do
kids.
what you got to
And
do.
that's kind of unfortunately how it was. It was like, I would go to the city or go wherever I had to go, and then it's like, okay, I'm good. I can go to Chuck E. Cheese. I can go
Right.
to King's Dominion. I
Right.
can do all this stuff. I can be a functional parent, but I had to have that drug. If I didn't have it, there was no
There
functioning
was
for
no
me.
function. You
No,
couldn't do
no,
anything. Okay, okay.
no.
Now, how about how did it impact the rest of your family though? Like not just your immediate family that you created, and
Right.
your kids. I mean, like mother, father, and brothers, and sisters, family. Family that way. Like how did it influence them?
Well, my drug addiction, I know definitely influenced them to where there was no trust with me. And when you're in active addiction, you think you have everybody fooled. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
no nobody knows what you're really doing.
Right.
So my mom, she would make like little comments like, like, why do you look like that or something, something smart. And I just be like, I'm tired, but at the end of the day, they all knew.
Right.
And no one trusted me, because it's like hide your pocketbook, hide your
Right.
whatever you got, because
Right.
Jody is at her most roguish state, and she is gonna steal from you.
Right, right. And they
So
love you too.
and
So
they
it's
love
like
me.
and they probably don't even know how to approach you
Right,
to help you.
right.
They don't want to push you away because
Well, I mean, I feel like they did try to help me, but no addict wants help until they're ready.
Right.
And unfortunately, me and my grandma, we talk about this often. She was my biggest enabler. She was my biggest enabler, as in, if I needed money, I could call her and ask her.
Right.
Of course, I would be like, the kids need diapers or some kind
But
of
she knew
bull crap
better.
story. She more than likely knew better, but she would always be the one to just give in to me. Stole my grandma's checks before. She was never the one to pump my brakes. She was always the one to be like, oh, if I lock her up, then the kids won't have a mom. So it
Right.
was like the whole family was getting after her, like, you need to stop enabling her. But
Right. But you would have found, but she knew, she was older and she had more
Yeah.
wisdom. She knew you would have
Yeah.
found a way to do it anyway.
Absolutely.
And so I guess she was figuring this would be the safest
Yeah.
way, the lesser
Yeah.
of two evils in
Right.
that sense, And it takes wisdom to make such a decision, make a
It
bad
does.
decision like that, the
It
best
does.
of two bad decisions. So, okay, so at what point did you, like, what was the lowest point for you in this whole time of addiction? Like, what was rock bottom?
I like to say it was my prison stay. That was my, okay, I've had enough. But I've had other lows of like having my kids taken away. When I was in very active addiction, my daughter was taken away when she was a couple days old. I was still getting high. Somehow I managed to defeat the drug test and got her back a couple months later. So like that was a low for me, but I think having everything like taken away. When I went to prison, that was like, okay, my rights as a parent are taken away. My dad passed away when I was in there. My grandfather passed away. So many things happened that it was like, shit, girl, this is it. Like this,
Right.
this is, there is no going back to that lifestyle, because if you go back, there's more people you're going to lose.
Right.
So I think being in prison was the wake up call and the low in a sense, because it made me realize, what's at stake if I go back to that lifestyle.
Right, right. And you know what's at stake.
And I know what's at stake.
Because you've already been there.
Right.
Yeah.
I already know what's waiting for me. Like, it is not an option.
Right. It's not an option.
No.
And that's good. Now, where does your faith play in all of this? Like, where's your belief?
As
God?
far as in, so I would like to say I'm not one of those super religious people. I pray, I read my Bible.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, that God has pretty much kept me where I'm at, And I always like to tell this story of, I believe I had some kind of guardian angel, some kind of, God had sent somebody down with me, because the day I got incarcerated, it was crazy. I got pulled over for tailgating in D.C. Like, who gets pulled over for tailgating in D.C., right?
That's how you drive in D.C.
Everybody's
That's
tailgating
how
in
you drive in
D.C. So
D.C.
I get pulled over for tailgating in D.C., and they run my name, and they find out that I had warrants for my arrest. So they lock me up. So I happened to find out that 2 people overdosed from the stuff I was going to get from the same person. And so, like, right then, I realized, like, well, not right then. It took me a good year of being incarcerated.
Right.
And that's when it kind of hit me, like, damn, I had some kind of guardian angel.
Yeah.
Like, God sent somebody to me, to that police officer to pull me over for tailgating, first of all, because, like,
Who gets pulled over? Like, you can't move in DC if you
Right.
don't tailgate.
Like, I'm like, what? But
Yeah,
it just hit
facts.
me like, obviously, that officer has some kind of wings. And I actually even thanked him in the courtroom. I said, if it wasn't for you pulling me over, I'd probably be dead right now.
Yeah,
Like my
yeah.
kids wouldn't have a mom that can at least calm collect. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? Like,
right,
they wouldn't
right.
have this. So,
And a lot of people don't have the introspection, introspective nature, and the fortitude to stand up and
yeah.
thank a person that in most situations people are like, man, you ruining my life. You know
Right.
what I mean? But
Yeah.
but to stand up and be like, you know what, thank you. You
Yeah.
you actually saved my life and recognize it and pay. That's a very, very commendable thing for you to do on
Yeah.
your part.
I was mad at him at first. Trust
Well,
me.
of course. Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. When you say you stood up in the courtroom and said
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's real. That's
Yeah.
real, because that means you took the time to really think about where you could have been.
Yeah. No,
So,
absolutely.
and how that would have affected everybody else. So I just want to give you credit.
Yeah, I'd definitely be
like,
6
stand on
feet
that.
under. But yes, that I do have the faith, that God is with me every day.
So how did that, like, so would you say the prison is where the recovery actually started? Like that was kind of like a forced recovery in a sense, right? It's like where it started, but like,
It was, yes, it was. Before I even got incarcerated, I had been to a couple different rehabs. Like, I was done, but I hadn't removed myself from the situation.
right,
So even though I wanted to stop getting high, I never had the opportunity to not be around those same people.
right. You couldn't change your
Right,
environment.
I couldn't change
Yeah,
my
that's hard.
environment.
That's hard. That's hard.
So prison was definitely that opportunity to get me away from the situations that I was in.
Right.
So yes, it was like a forced recovery, and I actually volunteered to do a lot of different programs, in prison, parenting classes, recovery classes, and it helped me to use my cognitive skills after coming home, and I still use them day to day. If I used to shoplift all the time before I went to jail.
Right.
And nowadays, if I go in the store and I see something that I might not be able to afford at the time, I like use my cognitive skills. What will happen if you take this?
Right.
You going back to prison.
Right.
Now I'm gonna wait until my next paycheck, kind of thing.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm
Right.
good.
Right.
So
Now, what about others that you lost along the way to the same addiction that you have? Like,
yeah.
dive into that a little bit if you care to.
So yeah, no. It's so sad because when I was in prison, a childhood friend, she actually used to be my brother's girlfriend. Even though she didn't die from an actual overdose, her cause of death was from the impact drugs had on her body. So that was one person. And it's just like, while I was in prison, you hear person after person, overdose. And it's like, damn, and then, as you know, my brother passed away from his addiction. And it's so disheartening because that drug can just take somebody, like.
Yeah. It's not like anything else.
It's not like anything else. And with him, it was just like kind of the party never ended, so, but it's just so sad when and I just had a cousin pass away a couple months ago from overdose. And so it's sad, but it's like now they're free. They're free from the chains of addiction. Unfortunately, us here on earth are still saddened by it, but they are no longer bound, by that addiction.
Right.
So,
and only a person who's gone through that can really view it that way, because that everyday fight. And it's just a terrible fight to have, man, to where you can't function. You can't function in the world without something. And to everybody, there's a lot of people out there who say, addiction is a choice and da 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 da. No, I disagree. Using a drug is a choice, but addiction is not a choice.
right.
Addiction is something that happens, and the more the more compassion that people can have for people. I mean, dude, think about it. Like, all the high school parties that we went to where we did things that we shouldn't have been doing, any of us could have gotten hooked on anything, and we didn't. If if those opiates were around during our high school days as prevalent as they are now,
Right.
it could have been us, because we were all experimenting. So just don't don't forget who you were and judge someone who made that mistake and got addicted because they made a bad choice to get high. Just have a little compassion, and I think that's a better way to
Yeah.
approach that situation. So,
No, and I definitely agree with you 100%. It is a disease, and unfortunately, it's hereditary. My dad, he was an addict. Even though we were never exposed to it, he got clean before, I know before I was born, but it's in my DNA. So unfortunately, me and my siblings, we have that addictive behavior that's already embedded in us.
right,
So it's like they say in NA, and even though I don't really go to NA, it's like one is too many, 1,000 is never enough, and that's
right,
how
right,
as an addict, it's like doing one is not an option because it's just gonna keep on going and going and going. I
right.
mean, and unfortunately, that's the sad part about it. As an addict, I can't just say, all right, let me just go get a bump and I'll be all right. No, hell
Right. It
no.
doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Because some people have way more addictive personalities
Yeah.
too. Like there are some people in this world who can do stuff for a week and then
And be fine.
don't touch it for
Oh yeah.
two years. You know what I mean? But
Absolutely.
some people do something and get addicted on the very first time, and it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So, like, what type of treatment plans did you go into? Like, I know you say you don't do NA, but like, what kind of treatment plans did you have to get into, or was it just all
It was
just
all up there. So when I was released, there was no kind of you need to do X, Y, and Z.
right,
Of course, obviously probation.
right,
But there was never you need to do this many hours in there or this. It to me when I came home, like I said, I dealt with so much loss in there that it was like my mind was already made up. I need to be on the grind. I need to get
right,
my kids back. I
right,
need to do what I got to do. And I've often told people, my brother was still active when I came home, and to see him get high, it didn't make me want to use. Like I remember in prison, females used to watch Intervention, and they'd be like, "Oh, that makes me want to get high."
right,
To me, it disgusts me. And so when I would see my brother getting high, it would be like, "Is this how I used to look?
right,
Like, was that
right.
me?"
It was like having an out of body
Yeah,
experience.
yeah. So it was like it was something. It was a turn off for me. It wasn't something I wanted to do. So like I said, where most people, they would want if you see someone high, you'd be like, "Oh, I want to get some of that."
Right,
Yeah, no.
right,
So that was kind of my mentality was my program. It was like I need to be on the grind. I need to do what I need to do to keep my life on track.
right.
I'm, you know,
That strong mind and a
that,
strong
right,
will.
right. And like I'm my grandma's little baby girl, I'm my mom's baby girl. It's like I need to show them I can do what I gotta do,
Right,
be
right.
the person that they know I'm meant to be.
And show yourself too.
And show
Show
myself.
yourself.
Absolutely.
Show yourself.
Absolutely. I give myself a pat on the back all the time. Not to.
No, I mean, hey, you deserve it though. The world will beat you up enough.
Right.
You must, if you're gonna be,
Right.
and if you're gonna beat yourself up, give yourself some praise.
Right. Absolutely.
Excuse me. Now, also, so like, I've spoken to a few people who've gone through this battle.
Mm-hmm.
Some say that they like to call themselves an addict in recovery
Mm-hmm.
to remind them that they are recovering, and some
Right.
say that they're still an addict, so they never go back to being an addict.
Right.
What is your approach, or do you even think about it in those terms at
So,
all?
I mean, I do say a recovering addict. Um, but I have heard people say it the way you put it. I'm an addict in recovery.
Right.
I just, say recovering addict. I mean, because I feel like I am recovering from a disease. I mean,
And it's like a perpetual thing. This is every day.
right.
Right.
It's never going to be over. And that's what my dad, maybe in like 2013, he was at 30 years sober of alcohol, and it was like a program he still worked.
Right.
He still read his big book because addiction never sleeps.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And you want what you want, and you can be
Right.
fine and
Right.
not do nothing for years,
Right.
and then one day you wake up and it's like,
and you want it.
yeah.
Yeah, so I will never be one of those people, and they say never, but I'll never be one of those people that says, I got this.
Right.
Because I don't know if a day could ever come where
where you're not strong enough.
where I'm not strong enough.
Yeah.
I pray that that day never comes.
Yes,
But,
yes.
you know, I've heard people say, I'll never do this and I'll never do that and I'll never get high again. You don't know.
Right.
You,
don't.
you
You
might
don't.
get weak one day.
You don't.
I
Exactly.
pray that I don't get weak one day.
Exactly. And see, and that's the part where a lot of people get things confused. Like sometimes we give ourselves too much credit.
Yeah.
Like usually when a person there's some sort of trauma related to drug usage generally.
Right.
Like a child isn't getting something at home. We're running around partying in high school, like, and everybody has a story,
Right.
you know. So like, it's just one traumatic. You're always one traumatic event away from
Right.
potentially being in a very, very bad place mentally, because you know what numbs the pain.
Yeah.
And whatever that is for anybody. Some
Right.
people it's alcohol, some people it's weed, some people it's coke,
Right.
heroin, whatever. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? So knowing that addictive personality is prevalent, what do you tell like the younger generation about? Like, what do you say?
Oh gosh. Well, so my kids are the younger generation, and it's a fight I definitely have with my 15-year-old. My 19-year-old, well, actually he's 20 now. I don't necessarily have a fight with him. I mean, weed's never been a drug of choice for me, right?
Right.
And it's legal. My 20-year-old, if he wants to smoke weed, just know, don't go further than that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you smoke weed, I can't argue with you. I feel okay with him that he's not going to go down that slippery road.
Right.
My 15-year-old, I constantly tell her my truth, my life.
Right.
Because she suffers from mental illness. She's got a lot of things going on. So, you know, she started with the vaping, and she says she vapes because it gives her it gives her some kind of
Endorphin release. It makes it
some kind of euphoric feeling.
Yes.
So I'm trying to tell her,
and depression will do that. Like
Exactly.
you'll find things to alleviate depression.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And
So,
I'm trying to tell her, baby girl, if you're vaping to try to fill some kind of void and feel something, what are you going to go to when that vape isn't doing it?
Right.
You know,
Right.
because this is now a gateway, you know. So I constantly, you know, try to tell her, find some other kind of ways to cope with what you're going through.
Right.
Because if you don't find another coping mechanism, then
You're just gonna keep finding more and more unhealthy ways.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
you're going to go to something else. And, you know, I don't want to see that, you know. So, yeah, I definitely do try to, you know, mentor her in the sense of, you know, do you want the life I live? You know, my kids sometimes, even though they tend to throw jabs at me and remind me of being in prison, they, I usually have to remind them, like, look, this is what your mom's been through.
Right.
Like, you know.
This ain't who your mother is.
Right.
That's what I've been through.
That's
That's a
what I've
part
been,
of my story.
You're right,
Yeah.
because they'll tell me, look at you, you're doing good now, you're a manager, da, da, da. And I'm like, okay, but I had to take steps to get here.
Right.
I went
Right.
through hell to get here.
Right.
Like,
And it's hell that I chose.
Right.
However, I was too young to understand the consequences of certain things. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So like, and I put myself in a bad situation, and it's so difficult dealing with kids. I got 6 kids myself, right? And it's like,
Damn.
yeah, I know, right? What up? It's so difficult when they get to those preteen and teenage years,
Yeah.
because you really have to balance being a parent but still being a friend.
Yes.
Because lines of communication need to be open with your children.
Yes.
They need to know that they can come and talk to you
Yes.
when they're hitting those peer pressure years.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
you got to joke around with your kids, but then sometimes they want to cross the line. All right, and
Yeah.
then you got to be it's such a delicate walk. So now
Right.
I understand, and each kid has their own personality.
they do.
So it's like you got to figure out ways to teach the same lesson to your kids, and you know, find the right verbiage
Right.
to
To get to them.
Yeah, to relate to all of them. So yeah, I understand that part. So, what should a family and friends of someone in recovery? What's the best way, in your opinion, for friends and family to support them, or do you feel like that's more rooted in the personality of the individual that you're trying to support? Like some people, you push too hard, they're gonna push back
Right.
and rebel. Some people, you push too hard, they'll listen, they'll comply. Like, do you feel it's more like that,
So
or
do you mean when someone's still active or when they're in recovery?
That's give me both. 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 That is very, very interesting.
So honestly, I think when someone is still active in addiction, I mean, I don't know if you ever seen intervention, but I'm 100% in agreement with them. You don't want to be an enabler. You don't want to, but you also, there's no sense in preaching to a choir that ain't listening. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to tell them, oh, you need to do this and you need to get clean and you need to, because they're not hearing it. They don't hear.
So what do you do? Just sit there and watch them kill themselves?
I mean, like when I was active, I remember family always saying, like, Jody, you need to get help or da-da-da. To me, it was blah, 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 blah. Like, I didn't hear anything they had to say. And that was like my brother with me, I would preach to him, but then I was like, you know what, Jody, step back because you didn't want to hear it. So why does he want to hear it? You can try to fight for them, but if they're not ready to fight for themselves, you're wasting your breath. I mean, that's honestly how I look at it. Like, yes, you can offer help.
Right.
But you don't want to sit there and beat a dog while they're already down because they're not hearing you. I mean,
okay.
And honestly, I mean, maybe that's just coming from my own personal experience. I didn't want to hear anybody. Right. Even if I, going to court to know my kids were getting taken away, I didn't want to hear it. It's like, I'd be in front of the judge. They'd be like, "You're getting your kids taken away," and then I'd go to the city and get dope. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. It was just a part of everyday routine so
right.
much.
It's not something that you even are even processing.
Right.
When you're in active addiction. But I think when you're in recovery, just having a support system. Like, I was fortunate to have a family that when I came home, it was like a judgment-free zone.
Right.
We're going to let go of what you did, and we're going to look at who you are today. And I think that's what pushed me and helped me, because even though I know I didn't come home with 100% clean slate,
right,
people were still a little weary of me, but they didn't show it,
Right. They didn't act like you had already done something. They just had their defense mechanisms up.
They had them up, but they gave me a chance to show them I can be a better person. They were all 100% supportive over me living a new life.
Right.
So that's kind of, my advice to helping people in recovery. Be their support system,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah. So, all right, so I know, the courage that it takes for you to even be able to come on and just, because, this is going up, you know what I mean? And I commend you for that. That's really, really hard because it shows how much you've thought about your journey, how much of it you've processed, and how much of it you deal with. You're very, very real with yourself.
Very real.
Very, very real with yourself.
I had someone at work tell me one time, I had posted on Facebook, at this point I was like 6 years clean, and there was another manager, and he said, "Come here real quick." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "What you post on Facebook, was that about you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You did heroin?" "Yeah, I did heroin. Drugs don't discriminate." Yeah.
Right.
And I told him, I said, if you have any questions, I'm open.
Right.
Like, there's no sense in hiding my story. I'm very open and honest and real.
But when did you reach that point of openness, though? Because that's a benchmark.
Right.
Because like you said, you didn't want to hear it before.
Right.
So if you didn't want to hear it, you couldn't have been open about it. You're lying. You say, "Oh, I'm just tired. I'm this." When did you reach that point to where you were just willing to be like, you know what?
Let me just
let go. Let go and let God because I've accepted. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And that's the thing, accepting. Accepting that you have a problem. Like one of the first steps. And so I think I probably didn't start becoming open. I mean, obviously I was in prison, and then when I came home, it was like diarrhea of the mouth. Hey, I went to prison. I used to shoot heroin. Like, this was me. This is my story.
Right.
So. It's always just kind of came out since I've been home.
And how long have you actually been home?
Actually, yesterday was 5 years. Yep, yesterday.
Big ups.
Yesterday was 5 years.
Much
being
respect.
home.
Much respect.
I like to say February 6, 2014 was the last day I touched heroin.
Congratulations.
And
Big
sometimes
applause
they
for
say
that.
your
Big
jail time
applause.
doesn't count. My jail time counts because I could have got it in there.
Well, and plus two, like, who's someone to say that? You know what I mean? Like, it does count. Like, your body is going through the withdrawals, you going through being dope sick, and you're fighting through that.
Right.
tell that person that it doesn't
Right.
count. That's not right. But that's
Right.
what I mean by people need to have more compassion
Right.
about things.
Right.
Just because they think you can't get something, first of all, it has nothing to do with that.
Right.
You're making a conscious choice.
Yes.
Like, yo, I've literally lost everything. I'm sitting here, and and some people are still making a conscious choice to get it
Oh,
while they're in
absolutely.
there. So how does it not
Absolutely.
count that I'm not making that conscious choice in here?
Absolutely.
It's oxymoronic for a person to say
Yeah.
that, but most people don't think about things. They
Oh,
just,
I saw plenty of females getting high. I'm like,
oh.
oh, God.
They say, you know what they say, you can get everybody can get everything in jail the same
Yeah.
way you get it on the streets.
You
You know
sure
what I'm
can,
saying?
just cost a little bit more.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
but it was
yeah.
like, so my clean time definitely in jail counts as well because I made the choice not to do it in there, you know?
Right. So, okay, so what are you doing now? Like, have you gotten into like, because to me, like the way you smile, the way your
Right.
personality is, like you recognize where you are in the fight,
Right.
but you're not gonna let nobody steal your joy.
Nah.
I think that, maybe I don't know if you have started already, but like maybe start pushing to be like the coach in this. You know what I mean? Like, because
So-
I really feel like this story's gonna touch a lot of people.
So with you saying that, so like two different things. So my boss, I love her so much. Like she, when I first started at my job, I started as a cook, and she knew my story. I told her my story probably 3-4 months after meeting her.
Right.
I've been there for 4 years now, and so when the position came open to be the director of dining, she was like, "I want you. Like you have a story, you have something to tell." But you're better now, and I want you in this position. I want to give you the opportunity. Like here, I'm a 27-time convicted felon. Like
Right.
you never think you have an opportunity
Right.
to move up in the world.
Right.
You know,
Right.
flipping burgers
Yep.
is about as much as people think.
Right.
You know.
But the moment you start living your life right,
Yeah.
God starts
Opening doors.
opening doors and laying the steps
Absolutely.
for you. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and that's why I definitely, like I said, I pray. All the time I give it to Him because doors open,
Right.
and He opens
Right.
them.
Exactly.
And that's why I do like to tell people, like, don't think just because you're a felon you can't have opportunities.
Right.
Some opportunities are
Right.
there. You
Right.
just have to show that you want them.
Right. Exactly.
But my boss used to always tell me, like, you're always the same. She just told me this like a month ago. She's like, Jody, in the 4 years I've known you, you're always happy. You never come in here mad.
Right.
You never yell at your employees. And I'm like, you know what? I've lived a life. Like
I've seen the worst.
I woke up this morning.
Yeah.
I didn't have to go get
Yeah.
no dope. Like I'm good.
Right.
Like
Right.
God woke me up, so I'm happy.
Right.
And there are times where I might, be in my head and be sad. But don't nobody need to know it. I talk to God, give it to Him, and it's done. You
Right.
know. But so then, as far as you said, coaching and stuff. So one of the social workers that actually took my daughter when she was born, I have a really super close connection with her now. Like, I've called her and told her to come over to my house. We went out to lunch a couple times. So she called me about 4 months ago, and she's like, I really want you to talk to a mother I have that's going through what you went through 14 years ago. Like, I want you to kind of, let her see that even though she's going through this process, there's hope, you know?
Right.
So I was like, oh my God, I feel so awesome that you're calling me,
Right.
of
Right.
all people
Right.
to come and help one of your mothers, that are going through what I went through.
And because it's a benchmark. That's
Yeah.
like a championship trophy. Like, you know
Absolutely.
what? I'm really doing well
Yeah.
when the person that took my kids away
Right.
is asking me for my help
Right.
to help with someone. And it allows you to see that other person in a different light too. Because it's like I imagine in the moment it's like, you know what? I hate you. You just took
Right.
my kids.
I know,
You just took the
absolutely.
only. You know what I mean? And now it's
Absolutely.
like, wow, no, you really do care about people.
Right. Well, no, and she's another one, just like with that officer. When I came home, maybe about a year after I came home, I saw this social worker. And I told her, I was like, you know what? I'm not even mad at you anymore. I mean, even though this had been years and years that she had took my daughter, and I said, you did what you had to do for the kids. You weren't
Right.
worried about me. Like,
Right.
obviously, you wanted to make sure the child was safe,
Right. Right.
And so with me acknowledging that to her, we ended up kind of building a friendship. Like,
Right.
who would think I'd be friends with the social worker?
Right,
Like, what?
exactly. Especially the same one that took
They took
yeah,
my kids,
yeah,
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
we're cool. Like like I said, I call her, she calls me. So it's definitely a rewarding thing, to just feel like, damn, Jody, you could make a change.
Okay, so lastly, are you ready to break the fourth wall? Is there anything that you want to look into that camera and say directly to anyone that's going through that struggle?
Look at me. There's hope. Like, I don't know. Like, there definitely is hope. Like I said, I'm a 27-time convicted felon, used to shoot heroin every single day. And February 6, 2014 was the last time I touched it. I, just that there's hope. There is hope for anyone that's out there struggling with addiction and feels like that you can never beat it. Well, I feel like you never really beat it, but you can.
But you can win every round in that boxing match.
Yeah, you can win the rounds in the boxing match,
Yeah.
absolutely. But there definitely is hope, and look at the light at the end of the tunnel because it's there. It's dim, but it's there.
Wow, this has been this has been an epic episode. And I really, really thank you for coming on and opening up.
Thank you.
People, remember, when you live with love, you always win, even when it feels like you're not. Episode 4 comes to an end. Thank you so much for coming on.
Deuces. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.